Welcome to CLAR's FileMaker State of the Union. Clay and I are very excited to be here in person. I am Lucy, manage the FileMaker engineering teams, and Clay is our FileMaker software chief architect. And he was a member of the original Draco team member. So together, we have 50 years, more than 50 years of experience on FileMaker. Today, we're going to focus on journeys. We look back at where we've been, where we are now, and where we are heading to. Clay will take you under the hood to detail the recent updates and preview the upcoming releases. What you do as FileMaker developer is amazing. As problem solvers, you transform ideas, use your imagination to bring FileMaker to new heights. We want to help you to go even further. Right? So we are delivering the best, the most powerful FileMaker we have ever built. It is the best time to be a FileMaker developer. And finally, we'll have some Q&A time. Also from FileMaker engineering team for this conference is Connor Brock, FileMaker team Scrum Master. Clay is not here. He's at the booth duty. Wade is not here. He's at the booth duty. He's the FileMaker senior server dev manager and architect. And we also have PM Rick here. So, all right. Let's start with FileMaker updates. This is the FileMaker release cadence since we last met in person. From 19.1, we transformed into Agile, releasing features, bug fixes as they are ready, regardless of major or minor versions. After 19.6, we advanced to 20.1 and named it FileMaker 2023. Now, ETS of FileMaker 2024 is available. Rick pushed the button yesterday. So we invite you to join the ETS program because we love your feedback. We want your feedback. And we really listen to your feedback. And we spend time digest it and categorize it and transform into engineering actionable items, one bug at a time, one feature at a time, one enhancement at a time. I am delighted to say we figured out a customer feedback loop to do what matters to you the most. And here they are. Thank you for your tremendous support. For the feature list that you asked. I know Klaus asked a lot. Vince asked. Thank you. I encourage you to ask for it. And then the validation of several thousands of bug fixes through these processes. Thank you very much. These bug fixes are the secret sauce for your smooth operation. And now the ETS for the next release. List of features and preview of LLM support. That's all in the ETS. Take a look. All right. So let me take you through a developer journey and discuss some of the recent features and enhancement. Paula is an experienced FileMaker developer. She works on FileMaker CRM solution for a high-end bike shop. The shop depends on FileMaker solutions to stay connected with customers and streamline internal processes and improve profitability. The bike shop's employees' dashboard needs to be dynamic and informative. So she used Layout Calc to show real-time information like inventory and repair status. The feature Layout Calculation text object that allow you to dynamically display calculated value on layout without additional field or variable. Paula shortens the development time and use system tables to get schema information of the FileMaker solution and use OData 4.0 to modify record relationships. How about data integrity? Customer information, their bikes, and the service details span multiple tables. Paula uses script transaction to ensure data entry meets the quality standard. And if she needs to track down who changed a record, all she has to do is look at the audit log that she configured with on-window transaction script trigger. The feature script transaction allows developers to group multiple changes according to business rules in a transaction for all or nothing. This helps Paula to keep the data clean and reduces the network chattiness between client and server. Developers like Paula can now use on-window transaction script trigger to create audit log or sync data. This offers opportunities to ensure data integrity and reliability. Here is what Paula did for integration. She made it simple for bike shop staff to use FileMaker solution with diverse job responsibilities in mind. Their service staff can scan bike parts with QR code. It is simple and accurate. Live text is used to generate reports on converted text for repair documents. Inventory Manager can approve orders through iOS and macOS shortcuts. We integrated live text on macOS and iOS and QR code for Mac, Windows, and Ubuntu. macOS and iOS shortcut can open existing integration, exciting integration possibilities. So the next release, Paula can leverage local notification on macOS, iOS, and Windows. How does Paula use server-side script to debug and troubleshoot? So analyzing data from repair shop is a heavy task. Paula sends those operations to the server asynchronously, so her users can continue their day without waiting. PSource is a popular tool for Pro and Go to execute scripts on server script engine. We enhanced PSource with async execution to call a completion script in callback when it's done. Some scripts behave differently on server script engine. So Paula enables error logging for server-side script to simplify debugging. It is easy to find the script error because they are split into separate log. Setting a session identifier for the script, Paula can identify exactly the user who sent the work to the server. For deployment, Paula's final touches are to encrypt the file and remove admin access. Thanks to Developer Tool, Paula can integrate that into her automation flow. With the data migration tool, she then upgrades the production version of the file. After the bike shop begins using the solution in production, she continues to make enhancements and keep track of developments and using the schema as XML after each update. Save a copy as XML is fast when performed on server. For bike shop, it's a big job every week. By automating this, it saves hours a week and many in a year. To Paula, a FileMaker developer, these features made it easy for her. It's time to go into production. Let me take you through a FileMaker admin journey. Our goal is to empower admin to keep FileMaker solutions running well, safe, and available to whoever needs them. Alex is the IT manager for the bike shop. He manages and runs FileMaker production servers. He handles deployment, efficiency, and security. For deployment, Alex can perform in-place upgrade directly from FileMaker Server 16 all the way up to FileMaker 19.x, 20.x, and even the new version that we will release in the future. Alex can update the new license certificate via the menu. No longer need to install FileMaker Pro. We continue to improve user experience for deployment. Capacity. FileMaker Server can host up 256 files now, up from 125. Admin role now allow each member access their own file, handle their own tasks. When you have multiple FileMaker solutions in a single FileMaker server, you can cut cost, simplify management, and improve resource allocation. This is very beneficial for solution bundle agreement for our partners who host solutions, multiple solutions for their customers. For backup, each solution's file set is backed up in its own threads in parallel backup. Alex can set backup schedule to create backup with clone-only option. He can cancel backup cleanly without affecting data integrity. Safeguarding your data is vital to us, and backup is more manageable now. For connectivity, some network admin cannot open port 5003. They now can use port 443 with HTTPS WebSocket tunneling on Ubuntu 22. Claris Connect can link FileMaker with other apps. FileMaker is integrated with Claris Studio. FileMaker's environment is more adaptable. For automation, Alex can implement speedy automation with 124 admin APIs and more on the way. He can schedule WebDirect garbage collection to optimize Java memory usage. FileMaker allows admin to work smart. We empower admin to keep FileMaker solutions running well, safe for whoever needs them. All right. How about the FileMaker scalability journey? When it comes to scalability, there are two things in mind: scale up and scale out. Scale up for FileMaker Server means 150 connections. And scale out means adding secondary servers to manage the load. The benefit for scale up is to ensure quality, uninterrupted connections. And the benefit for scale out is to support large number of connections for different kind of company sizes. There we go. This chart is about tested concurrent connections. WebD reached 1,000 concurrent connections in the upcoming 2024 release. Behind this chart, we put extensive, consistent engineering effort to reach to that 21.0 level. We know that every solution is unique. Performance and scalability depends on the network hardware and your solution design. So how does WebD scale up and out? Let me walk you through the steps. 1, you set up a FileMaker primary server. 2nd, you configure secondary servers with 3 VMs, run each can run 3 to 4 Docker instances. And then you install Nginx Plus as load balancer in the DMZ zone to distribute the concurrent connections across the 10 secondary servers. Both primary server and secondary servers stay behind the 2 firewalls. And we optimize the primary server to only handle database services. It does not handle WebD requests. It does not perform load balancing. This result is to improve performance, simplify management, and enhance security. So we enhanced WebD with 4-layer 4-layer CSS layout cache architecture for better performance. We improved threads with non-blocking threads between components, so there's no delays, everything can go at the same time. We provided a Docker file to manage those secondary servers. This is how WebD scaled out to 1,000 concurrent connections. Let me have Clay walk you through the demo.
Howdy. Yeah, this is a demo movie of WebDirect reaching over 1,000 concurrent users with the future version of the FileMaker Pro server. And this is being tested by our Beijing QA team. The hardware configuration is the primary server with WebDirect turned off. Nginx Plus, the load balancer 10 configured, running secondary servers. They're running our Ubuntu 22 with 8 gigabyte, 4 Intel codes, 8 gigabytes of RAM. And currently all the other clients are distributed over these 10 servers running right now. Now we're going to have an ad hoc user logging into this solution. You'll notice that we have a 15-second idle time. So this user is going through and just doing random operations while all the other clients are doing all these other tasks. They're creating sales orders, doing reports, paying, getting shipping costs, fulfilling orders. And notice that the user operations of this one ad hoc user going in here is not really being delayed in any way. You see them adding records, deleting records, making changes, and things are working quite well with 1,000, I think it said 1,067 ones running. During these tests, the operating system's performance metrics and the FileMaker server metrics like cache hits and remote procedure calls are all being recorded. And they're used to make a baseline for when we do future versions of FileMaker server. And then we compare them, see whether the changes we made were an improvement or not. So this is one of the ways we're improving FileMaker performance. And now we'll go back to Lucy.
There. Thank you, Clay. And it's exciting to see 1,000 concurrent connections. How about FileMaker stability and reliability? This is the 3 steps in our agile iteration process. Number 1, find bugs. How do we find the bugs? Customer feedback. We want your feedback. Send us the bugs. It's very important. We want to hear from you. Then internally, we run static analyzer and dynamic analyzer with tools like TSAN, ASAN to do stress test to find bugs. TSAN is threat sanitizer, ASAN is address sanitizer. We use Xcode tool instrument to find slowdowns and memory leaks on Mac and Valgrind on Ubuntu. For WebD, we use Java Developer Kit and third-party tools to find Java memory leaks and threats issues. Finding and reproducing these bugs, I want to tell you, in scalability, reliability, takes a huge amount of effort and time. So we leverage these analyzers and tools to find bugs. Of course, a lot of your help as well. Number 2, what we do is to fix bug and make the improvement. Clay is going to the detail about the features. I want to talk about highlight persistent cache. Persistent cache protects your FileMaker files from corrupting. It minimizes the transaction loss in situations like abnormal server termination or force kill. Your solution stay in a consistent stage with persistent cache, then admin server can restart the server again with very little loss, minimum downtime. We regress these bug fixes and go back to step 1 if we need to before we hit step 3. For validation, we've set the server longevity testing criteria to 2 weeks. Street. Server must run consistently for 2 weeks, no exceptions for every certification. We run stress tests with in-house tools, benchmark PSR testing against the previous releases, safety performance tests with SASE Fade, Apache JMeter tests for data API. We work with a core group of customers. I see Vince and Klaus there today. So we also work with a lot of other folks very closely. We call them Ring Zero customers. Together, we made FileMaker safer and more reliable. So thank you, Ring Zero customers. For security, FileMaker is more secure with hundreds of safety measures and bug fixes. I have examples. First, FileMaker solution can use custom OAuth or sign in with Apple, and you can use multi-factor authentication through these sign-in services. Please enable MFA whenever possible. We implemented, thank you. We implemented send mail with OAuth 2 for Office 365 and Gmail. We made signing in more convenient by adding login services for you. Next, we upgraded FileMaker to OpenSSL 3.0.11 for Mac, Windows, Ubuntu to improve security and better performance. TLS 1.3 boosts security and better performance for a speedy connection. And let me know if you need FIPS 140 compliant. We can talk after this session. For XDBC, we upgraded the X509 signature algorithm to SHA-256 from MD5. We support ECC certificate for higher encryption strength, such as P384. ECC is considered very secure against attacks. Then, You can restrict admin console access to specific IP addresses. We added PKI authentication for admin API. PKI stands for Public Key Infrastructure for Online Information Security. No need to share admin password for running admin API. Admin can control JSON Web Token, JWT, on admin console. It is secure, compact, and fast. Finally, when we triage bugs, we treat security as high priority at all time. We always watch for common CVEs and security patches. Clarus is an Apple company. We follow Apple high security standard. We do security code. We do source code security scan for our product and fix vulnerabilities whenever possible from multiple sources, including Apple internal security services. We made FileMaker more secure. It's important for you to upgrade as soon as you can. With all these, we are delivering the most powerful version of FileMaker ever in history. It's the best time to be a FileMaker developer. And I want to invite Clay, the guru of FileMaker everything. The one and only Clay. So there we go.
So thanks, Lucy. But I'm going to start talking about the FileMaker Clients Pro and Go first, then do some server stuff and other sections like this. Now, this is going to be a mixture of 2023 features and 2024 features that are upcoming, and what the differences are, and some of the under the hood stuff as I go across all of them. Now, the stuff that you see that I'm going to be talking about 2024 may not be in the first release or in this first ETS release, but most of it is all expected to be out by the end of this year. So much like we had like 3 releases of 20, maybe we'll have 3 or 4 releases of 24, or which internally is going to be called version 21, just to make things even more confusing. So, calculation improvements. In FileMaker 2023, there is read QR code. We've brought it to Windows and Ubuntu. Now, this is a kind of an ongoing theme in general in these releases and upcoming releases, is that we're bringing technologies that were only specific on certain platforms and bringing them over to the other platforms, or even stuff that was on iOS only and bringing it to other sections. And stuff that was on Mac and wasn't on Ubuntu and stuff like that. Get Live Text supports more languages, and this is another one where we're working in the future to actually improve Get Live Text. You probably won't see it in the first version of 2024, but to actually work on platforms other than Apple platforms, and also to support other multiple other data types and other than images, so like PDFs or maybe Word documents and stuff like that. This is really being kind of driven by the AI work, because we want to be able to feed all your documents into and spread them out so more things can be hallucinated on. We have Get Network Protocol. Okay, this is just kind of a pet peeve for me, or not a pet peeve, but something I like, because I wrote a whole bunch of different protocol supports for like AppleTalk, IPX, NetBIOS, other ones that didn't ship. So this function used to return a whole bunch of different values. And then eventually TCP/IP1, which didn't actually exist in the first version of FileMaker. So that took over, and so it's been returning that for like the last 20 some odd years or something like that. But now it actually gets to return something else. When you turn on HTTPS tunneling, it will now return HTTPS. So there actually is a use for this function now. FileMaker 2024, we're doing JSON improvements. This first one was brought up on the community forums and had a lot of discussion how to work for it and stuff like that. But basically, you can just, instead of going through looping and finding out how many elements in the array, you can say, I just want to tack something onto the end of the JSON array. So you can use the plus operator. When I was in Antwerp, we were discussing this, and people were, they were actually already mocking it up and seeing how it would work and stuff like that. And say, well, when I append something to the end, what happens if I want to reference something at the end? So we had like a 3-hour discussion trying to determine what the character is going to be, and I implemented it in about 40 minutes. So that's how things usually work. But so now the colon character is going to be last element. So it's nice. You can use the appender to put a JSON object at the end, and then use the colon operator to set specific fields inside that object that you added. It makes things pretty nice. Another thing we're adding is a new function. Everyone seems to be wanting to use arrays now, but a way to make an array a little bit easier. So there's the definition of the function up there. There's 3 parameters. The first one does, you give the list, you give the chunk of text that has the elements you want to add to the array. The separator, you can determine whether you're doing comma separated, tab separated, or carriage return. Well, go to the next slide to see that. And you determine the number type, or the type that you want all the elements in the array to be. And in here, I'm using comma. I want JSON numbers. There's the input, and then you just get an array of numbers. In this version, I want strings. So I want to have red, green, blue be part of the array, the strings. Now notice that the separator field is empty. When the separator field is empty, it'll treat that, the default is basically look for carriage returns, line feeds, carriage return line feeds, or the multitude of Unicode characters that represent paragraph in locations and stuff like that. So when it's blank, it's actually scanning for a lot more different things to find what the array terminator is. And in the last place, here I'm using the sharp character. I'm using JSON raw. I don't know how many people of you know actually what JSON raw is doing. But what JSON raw does is once you grab the text, we give it to the JSON interpreter, and then it tells us what type it thinks it is. So if it sees a JSON object or numbers or Boolean or null, we'll just output that as those types. If it sees a string, or if it can't parse it, if it can't recognize it, doesn't know if it's JSON or not JSON, it'll just put it in a string. So it'll quote it and dump it down in there. So JSON is actually, there's some interesting uses that you can use with JSON raw if you're doing mixed operations and you don't know the data type, but it's not, it's not the guaranteed it won't fix your JSON or stuff like that, but it interprets the data coming in. Now we go on to scripting improvements. We had the perform script on server with callback, which has been mentioned. Triggering Claris flows and Claris connect flows script step. Then in the first version, you had to copy and paste the URL, and then in another version, you got a pop-up of the flows that were available to you if you logged in with your Claris ID inside FileMaker. That's another change with the thing is, FileMaker 20 is now you can always log into Claris ID. Before it was determined on the type of license you had, whether you had a license that was dependent on that you could connect to cloud. But now it's always available there because we're using that Claris ID to access Connect, Studio, and Cloud. There's the can defer notification and loop script step. I noticed that there's been a couple sessions already talking about this, and we have a blog talking about when you would want to use it and the different behaviors with the 3 different options. The short thing is, the Cliffs Notes version of it is, if you're doing anything relational inside the loop, or you want the UI to refresh while you're inside the loop, leave it the way it is. You do not want to defer it. If you're doing neither of those things, then you can just go ahead and defer notifications, and the loop will go quicker. Coming up in the future, this is the configure local notifications will now work in FileMaker Pro. Lucy mentioned that. This is still other operations that we're bringing to multiple platforms. This was a iOS-only feature, and now you can bring it up there. And we do have a prototype of it working in WebDirect. I'm not quite sure whether it'll make it out in the first release or not, but we're working to try to bring that also to that platform. Something that we're coming up, notice that we've been starting to do more things with callback. This is kind of our, I guess, people have been wanting to do I want to run multiple scripts at the same time. We want to, have, more asynchronous operations and stuff like that. FileMaker being very context sensitive, it depends on which file, window, record you have selected and where the insert cursor is located inside the field for all this stuff. trying to do multi-threaded operations when there's the context of just how the machine is setting there is very tough to do. So we're going to stick with this callback model where it actually, the first version of it was on the install on timer script step. That actually is basically an early version of the callback because after the timer triggers, it would then schedule the script to be executed at the next possible moment. And that's the same mechanism that perform script on server with callback is going to be using and what we're going to be bringing to insert from URL. Now we're going to probably be leaving insert URL the way it is, that current script step, and it's going to be a newer version that's going to be more microservice oriented and won't be dependent on like where the cursor position is. We're going to be removing basically because all the insert scripts behave the same way. They depend on like what field is selected, actually whether all the text is selected or whether the cursor is blinking in a particular location. It's really more, anything starting with UI is really more UI oriented, but insert from URL is being used for a lot of other purposes and mainly I don't know how many people are actually using it for UI purposes, but we'll have a new version that's with the GUI and the options that are more relevant for doing microservice calls. And you could like start a download, and then when the download completes, a script will be called telling you the download completed, and we'll probably, don't know whether it's going to be the parameter or there'll be some mechanism to get the results of what you asked for. It'll probably be the parameter of the script that's called. The other change is the Execute Data API now has write support. You know, previously you could get the metadata or do read operations on data using that script step. One thing that we noticed, if we went back to the on window transaction trigger, you have when you want to, if you're doing auditing and you want to write the same file that you're in, you have to worry about recursion because you don't want the on window transaction to trigger for your audit records. But and there's different tricks. You can open another window, but then returning the state back to where you were can be complex sometimes. Or the best thing is like I think the demo we have writes it out to a file, or to like a text file in JSON format, or you can just write it to another file that doesn't have this trigger on. But now with Execute Data API write support, the FileMaker Data API doesn't trigger the on window transaction. So you could just do write operations directly to wherever you want. For your auditing information or make your sync statements. And there's probably going to be a whole bunch of other purposes why you want to do write operations internally. At some point that's not dependent on the context of anything else. And so this is what it looks like. The key change is that the action tag here now has more things other than just read and metadata. So in this record we have Bob Weller, with a rating of 35, his record ID is 6919. You notice this is your standard, FileMaker Data API request. It's a little bit different than what you do over the network because over the network you're determining the action by whether you're doing puts or deletes or patches. In this version, that's all determined basically by the action tag. But here we want to update this thing to Bob Jones with this record ID. So here we execute it, it changes the name, and we get the standard response back saying that there was no error in what the modification ID of that modification count, basically of that record. Now here we're going to do Robert Square with a rating of 3, and we want to change his rating. Now rating is a number field marked to be number only. And here I'm passing in a payload of saying that, oh, I'm trying to shove some text into this number field. So this should be an error. And of course, when you execute it, you do get the error here and the string for it. A new enhancement for Execute FileMaker Data API 2 now is that we're going to parse the JSON response coming back from that and set get last error and get last error details with those values there. So when you make these calls, you'll no longer have to like parse the JSON result for doing simple operations where all you do is expecting a result coming, an error code or the error result coming back. You'll still have to parse it if you're asking for record data and stuff like that, but a lot of these new calls, when you delete, a lot of these newer ones, you're just looking for the error code and whether it succeeded or failed. Some other client improvements. Don't look at the picture on the right yet. The on-window transaction script trigger, that came in. I've discussed that already. There's layout calculations. The first iteration of this This actually caught our marketing department by surprise. They didn't realize everyone was going to be so excited about it. But you have to remember, so the first implementation of this right now, you have to treat it as the evaluate calculation function. So all the limitations of the evaluate calculation functions apply to this text that you're doing there. So if you wanted to be able to work over multiple locales, the calculation actually has to be in English. Because if you try to run it on server, it doesn't know about, server, you can't set it to like Korean and stuff like that. So it'll probably fail over there. The other thing that the evaluate calculation does, since you're only passing in the text of the calculation, it makes it fragile if you're going through changing field names, table names, and stuff like that. But what you have to think is, when you think of layout calculations, you really have to think, oh, this is really actually an evaluate calc that's on my layout. Now, we do have plans to start doing a backstore of this with the actual calculation definition, with the actual parse, the reverse Polish notation, binary version of the calculation, and put that in there. That will also allow us, I know Vince is complaining that he can't get the chunks of the calc from the XML definitions of these things. And once we back it store with that format, of course it'll be backward compatible. If only the text is there, we'll just use the text and continue using it like the evaluation. But I don't know if we're going to try to do automatic update, or you'll have to go in there and like touch the layout text to force it to generate the calc backing store for it. That will then be used for doing evaluations. And I guess we'll talk about the Go favorite widget now. So on Go, we've written a widget on there that will show you what the current favorite items. So if you can go and you select a couple files and you make them your favorite file, you can now have a widget laying on your, I'm not sure what it's called. It's not the Finder, it's a desktop or whatever they call Springbar? Springboard, okay. So you can put this widget on your Springboard, and you click on any of those things and it'll launch Go and then take you to that file immediately. So it's a nice little quick usability thing. We may bring it to the Mac OS too, but Apple keeps changing these widget APIs. It's really a pain right now to keep up with it. Right now I can't even use Xcode 15 to compile this widget because it just doesn't work at that point. So I have to figure out, all I did was just change compilers and now it won't run. But we'll work that out. So, that's a clue. We're still using Xcode 14 for the current version of FileMaker, or this ETS build even. And let's talk about Clara Studio token revocation. So we'll go back, talk to the evil stepchild of Claris Pro. To talk to, so we have to get into the details of how we talk to the Claris Studio product. So we make a connection, and you have to have a Claris ID where you're a team manager on it. And once you have a team manager, and when you go into the join graph and you add a new table reference, like how you do ESS and stuff like that, what you're actually doing is that it's using your team management credentials to get a token to access all those tables in that organization. And that token is then stored, and you can see this if you go to Manage External Data Sources after you've made a connection to Studio. You'll see a type Claris Studio type external data source. Now in Claris Pro, if you double click on this thing, it did nothing at all. Once the token was created, you couldn't delete it, you couldn't revoke it. People would have access forever if they had that copy of that file. So that was a bit of a hole. So starting with the FileMaker 2023, now if you double click on it, you can at least revoke the previous token and get a new token to use it, or leave the old token alone because you've given clones of this file to other people that you want them to continue using that token, and then you want new people using your file using the newer token and stuff like that. Now this is still not really optimal, but the Studio's user management and user permissions is still in flux right now, and they're going to have to be doing token management too, which there'll be some UI to probably see which tokens, and eventually when you connect to Claris Studio, you'll probably be asked, which token that you created do you want to use for this connection? So you can do a little bit better management when you're creating solutions connected to Studio. But that's more, you'll have to go to the Studio team to say when that stuff is ready, because we're just waiting for the APIs to be there for us to be able to hook this stuff up. We know what we want to do. We're just waiting for the APIs to be available for us to actually do the hooking it up to it. So now we'll go on to the FileMaker server and networking issues. First, a little quick history of older slides of mine. So in 2006, this is basically the FileMaker, what the FileMaker server was all doing. We had one basically very monolithic FileMaker server. It loaded plugins, which made it kind of fragile if a plugin gave a problem. XDBC was actually implemented as a plugin, not a separate process. We were using, oh yeah, we actually supported Palm devices and Newtons at that point, if you guys remember. And we had the web publishing core. This is when we were doing instant web publishing. This was even before WebDirect. 10 years later, we're getting a little bit more modern. We tried to move more things out of the database server process, like backups and SASE and the standby logic. The XDBC listener was outside there. These little two brown lines up here, Lucy mentioned about how we improved the security of the XDBC. These little brown lines, which is this custom protocol, is what we improved. It was using MD5 before, and that's a known security risk at this point. So those lines are updated. We were using Java here pretty heavily with the UAC client. We found out that widgets were not very stable between different versions of Java. So every time you updated Java, the UAC would break. And over here, we still had the main FileMaker protocol going back and forth on port 5003. But we were starting to use HTTPS to do container downloads if the containers were stored as external files. So we wouldn't go through the FileMaker server process. We could just talk to the web server. The web server would then know where those files were stored on disk, since they weren't inside the FileMaker database itself. And you could download it directly just using the web server to do the file I/O. So in FileMaker 2023, we introduced HTTPS tunneling. It's only on Ubuntu 22 right now. I'll talk about those reasons a little bit more later. In 2024, and actually in 2023, we've been starting to move OData to be 4.01 compliant. It's not quite all the way there, but it's our goal to make it fully compliant. In the next version of the first version of 2024, we're implementing $select and $expand in the thing. And so this gives you the ability to do things like inner joins and left outer joins to kind of match the same capabilities that the ODBC driver has. And other thing is the security fixes and this Apple team that Lucy was talking about, fixing the stuff that they've been telling us about, and just then makes us look at what's going on. We've been finding things where we can optimize the opening and closing process of FileMaker. We noticed that when you were closing down the file, that it was actually starting to log out and start shutting things down. And then something at the end would ask, oh, I need to update that too. So then it would download it again, update it, and upload it. And then, it's like, oh, well, that was doing things in wrong order. So we're rearranging stuff, and we're actually looking at what's going on, because over these number of years, things have just been getting crufty. And I mean, it all works. It's just not optimal. So this is not necessarily FileMaker 2024. This is kind of like the future that we're shooting for. What we want to do is actually just get rid of the XDBC listener altogether. We want to make OData as our main data source for things. Like talking directly with OData, the ODBC driver will be one of these drivers that basically take SQL statements and the ODBC APIs and just convert them to OData directly. Same with JDBC. Now you can purchase drivers that do that right now. There are drivers out there that do this type of operations if you want to talk to OData and you need to give it an old ODBC API to it. But ours will be slightly different because we have some additional features for accessing container data and stuff like that. That's really non-standard that these other products out there wouldn't be able to support. They'd be able to support regular straight table data, but not some of the additions that FileMaker does. Now we're using the FAC. That UI, which we'll be showing, is now all React based, all using Node.js underneath, all using JavaScript. We got rid of Java completely in this state. We still are using Java to run Vaadin, which is kind of the core for WebDirect for doing the user model inside there. It's a Java process that's generating the HTML pages that you're viewing. We'd like to get away from that, and there is some work. We're taking some of the stuff being learned from Clara Studio for how to do pages and stuff like that, and some of the infrastructure from inside there to start working on the eventual replacement. But this is going to be a pretty big job. This is not something 2024 that's going to change by that point. The other thing is that we'll probably be trying to move more to the HTTP model, where HTTP tunneling is actually using WebSockets to communicate. It's really not using HTTPS as the protocol. Ideally, what I would want it to do is use HTTP2, which is the new modern standard for doing bidirectional communications between a server and a client. But proxy support for HTTP2 is a little bit spotty. There's some out there that work. There's some people really poo-pooing HTTP2 because of how it can't have multiple channels communicating, which web browsers really want to do. We don't need that because we just have one thing that we're going back and forth on. So that problem isn't a problem for us. But if everyone else doesn't start using HTTP2, then all the tools and all the infrastructure out there won't be there to really support it properly. So we may be stuck with WebSockets, but that's like a direction I want to go in. You really want to use the new definitions. So getting into HTTPS tunneling a little bit more, when it's enabled, FileMaker Pro uses port 443 to communicate with the server through the primary web server. If you enable it on server but not on Pro, FileMaker basically falls back to the old protocol using port 5003 and using the GIOP protocol basically layered on top of a raw TCP/IP stream. And then tunneling is enabled on Pro but not server. Pro will not communicate with server. So one of the reasons for this is that the notification or the negotiation process that goes on when client is connecting to server is pretty complex right now, because it tests to see whether you can get an SSL encrypted TCP/IP stream, and then if it's not there, then it tries doing without encryption, and then it has to negotiate whether the file is read-only or read-write, and that's like a four-step process. If we have to start pinging to see, oh, can we talk with going through HTTPS, or do we need a fallback? Then that multiplies that by 2, so now we're up to 8 negotiations that have to go on during the connect process. So in FileMaker, this circle is just showing where you enable it in the Pro products and in the main app setting. Something that would help here is we can cut down on these negotiations if we can stop peer-to-peer serving. I mean, we've been trying to kill peer-to-peer for a long time.
How come it's still there?
There's people that scream when we try to kill it, but maybe someday we'll just ignore them. I don't know. It depends on. And also, because to do the HTTPS tunneling, you really have to have a web server. You can't do it without to handle all that, to handle all the negotiations and do the proxy work and all that stuff properly. Oh, I keep forgetting about that little text. You can also put it on your assisted install text file. So if you're doing a bulk installation and you know everyone is going to be using the HTTPS, you can do that and have it turned on by default at installation time. Limitations of HTTPS tunneling. Like I mentioned, you can't do peer-to-peer. Some web proxies and load balancers out there will only leave the proxy running for maybe 30 minutes, and then it just resets the connection completely. I don't know why, but so this will make FileMaker do a reconnect at that point. You'll notice that, oh, the connection went down. We need to re-enable it. And then now FileMaker will do that automatic reconnect as if you got a disconnection because the cable got pulled out and then pushed back in and stuff like that. But it's still not ideal. You'll want to check with your proxy vendors and your load balancers and make sure that they keep WebSocket connections up all the time while it's running. You don't want it going through resetting it regularly. And since you're going through a proxy, you have to realize that that proxy can be looking at all the data going in and out of it. They can set up other security certificates on both sides. So hopefully you trust your web proxy vendor or your IT department, I guess, which is the one that installed the web proxy server. And there's a little diagram over here. You can see the proxy is outside the servers. The clients talk to they use ports 443 to talk to the secondary servers and the primary servers. But FileMaker internally is still using port 5003 for all the processes behind there. It's faster. We don't have to go through the web browser. We can do process-to-process communications directly. Yeah, we have some other time pressures coming up, and I'll get to that at Q&A. So I'm going to go a little bit more quicker through this, the server admin console. Backups are no longer a separate task. Backups are now schedules. So you see what the UI looked like before 2023, and now in the new version, you'll be able to see, you can pick the default schedule, or you can see any particular backup schedule in the UI here. We're trying to, hopefully we won't change this anymore, but prior to 19.6, backups, where they were going, what they were named, seemed to keep changing all the time. You know, they were, when backups are canceled, they were put in an aborted folder, now they're put in a canceled folder. Some versions would delete the canceled backups, other ones would leave them around, but now we give you a choice. So there may be a reason that you may want to keep a canceled backup, because, you know, maybe it's like an 8-hour backup because you have, you know, terabytes of data you're backing up. And maybe it succeeded with 4 of the files, but you just couldn't wait for the last file to be backed up. And you may not want to dump them all, because if there is some catastrophe, you at least, you know, 3/4 of your data you'll have a nice clean backup of it. So it really depends on your use of, you know, how big and how long you're waiting for this stuff. Configuration systems. So this is where persistent cache is turned on. We've been playing with it. We've been fixing some bug fixes since the 2023. We're a lot happier for how this is. Basically, what the persistent cache is doing is that we're using memory mapped, file-backed memory allocation. So we allocate a block of memory, and then we tell the operating system, map this to this file. So the operating system is basically, as we make writes to our cache blocks internally, it in the backside is doing and writing it to disk immediately. And when you turn on the sync to disk, that we tell the operating system that we want it registered to disk almost immediately whenever there's any change. When the virtual memory manager detects that a block changed, that it'll then do I/O and write it out immediately. And the auto restart is saying that, well, so the reason we're doing that, so we're writing all the in-memory cache structures that we have inside server to disk. So if the server process gets killed, or it crashes, which it shouldn't anymore, or someone does a server shutdown that, you know, forces the OS to, you know, want to shut everything down quickly, so then it just goes through and does a bulk kill of all processes. What was in memory will be on disk, and when the server restarts, it'll look for these files to see if they're setting there. And if the auto restart is on, it'll use that to reconstruct the cache and then basically continue at that point, finish flushing things out to the files properly to get nice clean files at that point. This does not help in the case where you pull the cord out of the wall, because we're depending on the operating system to get it to the disk. And there's nothing we can do if it's in process of going to the disk and then the disk blows up or the power disappears. So this is really for like software style errors. And syncing to disk immediately is a little bit slower, but I think we're going to start recommending that you turn that on. Another new feature is block new users. This is good for people doing maintenance. So you may want to log in, you kick off users that you don't want on there anymore because you want to scan something, you want to make you want to do a live update where you don't want people logged into that moment. So now you can turn that on so no people can log in while you're doing your stuff, because you don't want to yeah. You probably really should be using the migration tool and do the whole dev staging but you know, you have to do hot fixes sometime. You know, your customer just won't wait. HTTPS tunneling, this is where you turn it on in the server UI. Remember, it's Ubuntu 22 only. Note that we're really starting to use Ubuntu as the main server development world. New features that come out will be Ubuntu 22 first, You'll probably be the most tested. We really want you guys to move to Linux servers. I know there's some Microsoft only houses that won't let you run any Linux. You know, that's an evil word to them. The Mac OS, we try to kill it, but then Apple says, why are you dropping our support? And I asked them, well, when's the last time you sold a server software and server hardware and stuff like that? But a Mac Mini is not a server. We're doing scheduling improvements. Pre-FileMaker Pro, you only had 4 columns and some options here. So now you get a lot more columns. There's 3 more fields in there. You can now rearrange the columns. You can hide columns, show columns, sort them, filter them. I know some of you guys out there have like hundreds of schedules and stuff like that. So it's now a lot easier to manage that. So prior to 2023, when you created a new schedule, it was kind of limited. It's kind of like how FileMaker worked. You had to drill down into multiple dialogues to go through and set things. The new version, everything is in like one panel. And you can see backup now is a new schedule type. So backup is not in another area. It's now all built into this the schedules. It's just schedules for one thing. Garbage correction and Let's Encrypt. Actually, for Nginx, this is where you set where the load balancer is actually located that you want to use. Here you can force garbage collection. I don't know how often people will use this because I'll show on the next panel what you probably will really want to do instead. But if for some reason you want to toggle the garbage collector to run, you can do that there. So here, in the system scripts, we now have like 3 new system scripts. You'll be able to run the garbage collector immediately, force the garbage collector to run on secondary servers, and we're bringing Let's Encrypt certificate support to the server product. Now, it's only going to be on Ubuntu and Mac first. There's really not that much UI other than that in the server. We're supplying you the scripts that you need to run and instructions of all these other services that you have to download and install, basically Unix style services to actually get the certificate and to install the certificate. So the plan is to eventually maybe roll this all more into the UI so you don't actually have to run shell scripts to set it up initially. But what you'll want to do, since Let's Encrypt certificates always expire after 90 days, you'll probably want to have your default reload certificate script run basically at 80 days and stuff like that. Because you can't update the certificate, I think you have to wait at least 60 days or something like that before you can update it. There's a window where you can do the updates. I may have the numbers off, but that works like that. I like this because I can never remember the URL to get to the FileMaker database. I also don't like any notifications from the server, and I don't know who actually I need to call and yell at saying that it's down and not running. So now when notifications go out, you can set who the owner is and who needs to be there. Yeah. Logging enhancements. Lucy was mentioning how scripting is split out. If you really want the scripting log to go into the main event log, you can still turn that on. And this is where you turn on the logging for the SASE, for the data API, and the web publishing script logs. Those 3 files you can either turn on or off. You have to turn them on here for the script step inside FileMaker to start logging and stop logging to work. If you don't have these on and you have that script step in your script and it runs on one of these other platforms, the web publishing or WebDirect or the SASE, it won't force it to turn on. It won't turn this option on. So other FileMaker improvements. We're improving the caching. Caching is hard. And a lot of the improvements inside WebDirect to be able to support more users and to in the one process is to do a smarter level. We have this 4-layer cache. There's this whole big blog internally that I read some of it of and saying, well, okay, but basically basically, at different layers, you can cache more things and not cache things. Some layers of the cache you can share between multiple clients because they don't change based, why if you have 150 clients talking to this web process, before we were creating 150 different caches of this object. But now we're smarter, we'll only have it cached once because it rarely changes, and it's less memory to use, less stuff to allocate, deallocate, and handles things easier. Non-blocking threads, we're going through using these advanced debugging tools that Lucy was mentioning before. Some of them tells you where your hotspots are, what mutexes people all these processes are hanging on. So we look at the hotspots and saying, oh, why are all 149 other users waiting for this mutex? Why do all these clients actually have to wait for this one resource? And sometimes it's just someone was a little bit paranoid and decided, well, let's make sure it's safe, so we'll throw in a mutex. So, that's one reason when you don't understand what's going on, just throw in a mutex and, you're guaranteed that it'll work. It won't necessarily be the fastest, though. And then you kind of have the opposite problem is that some developers are saying, well, let's just throw it on another thread because, but, 10 threads are nice, but, 1,500 is not. It just basically kills, your processor if you're trying to run that many things at the same time. Sometimes it's a lot faster just to, don't even spin up the thread, just wait for the process for some threads to come back. It's thread pooling. It's a very standard pattern. With using these tools, we've been finding C++ memory leaks, thread locking issues. So this is ASAN that's been finding these things. This is TSAN that's been doing this. TSAN is pretty nice in that it'll tell you when two different threads are accessing the same memory and there wasn't any type of synchronization event between those accesses. Now, when you run these tools, it really slows down server. So, well, sometimes we'll give a customer a specific ASAN version if there's something that we can't reproduce internally, but these builds with these tools turned on are really very specific and only useful in certain situations. But we've been fixing the memory Java leaks that were occurring. So in addition, actually, I really hate garbage collection operating systems. I really want more control. And you can even see that with Apple with Objective-C. The first version, you had to do memory management yourself. You had to grab and release. The second version, they say, oh, we want to make it easier, so don't worry about it. We'll do garbage collection. We'll clean up memory when it's no longer used. That didn't work out very well. So they went through and then they did something which is actually pretty smart, is that during compilation time, it knows the code flow and how things are working, and it basically does what the first process was. It does the grabs and releases, but you don't have to figure that out. It knows how the code can flow through your system and adds those things magically behind the scenes. So I wish Java would do something like that. But we've been fixing memory leaks, and we've given you these abilities to force the garbage collector to run more often. I mean, Java is supposed to run that stuff when it needs to, but I've never been happy with it. So the workaround is to schedule that. Also, the other thing you'll see, the other thing in WebDirect that we did that to improve things is that the list view is now almost a complete new implementation of it. It doesn't flash all the time every time a new record comes in. It's actually usable now. Well, it was usable if you were the only person on the system, but so it looked good for a demo. But the minute you have other people doing work at the same time, it failed pretty quickly. And lastly here, open source upgrades. She mentioned these things that we've been upgrading. The Java version is kind of pretty much tied to the Vaadin version we're using, so we want to make sure that they're compatible with which versions. OmniWare 4.3 gave us the ability to use WebSockets for doing the communications. Interesting thing, OpenSSL 3, killed a bunch of cryptography things like MD5s, and we use MD5 hashes internally inside FileMaker, so we actually had to write our own implementation of MD5. This is not a security issue because you can't ever get access to that hash. You can't twiddle some bits and communications going back and forth to fake out something. So it's safe as long as you don't give access to the MD5s. It's actually faster than some of these other ones too. But in FileMaker 24, we'll be updating Tomcat, curl, the latest version of that. There's always a newer version of OpenSSL. I think 12 is coming out soon too now, so it may be that. A big thing here, replacing Xerce and Xenon with libxml. Xerce and Xenon has not been supported and has not had an update like in 10 years, I think. And we've been getting bugs of how it can't handle modern Unicode characters and a bunch of different issues there. And so we're now moving to a XML library that's supported, open source. Apple uses it internally, or Apple installs it actually on the OS. And this gives Beverly Voth another chance to write a new book. So. The other thing, Ubuntu 20.04, I don't know whether we announced this, but I'm telling you it's coming up. We're going to be dropping support for that. We can't support 3 versions of Ubuntu because, Ubuntu 24 is coming out, and that'll be the new version. So we'll be moving to supporting 22 and 24. And I think the LTE stuff is dropping off soon on 20. So this is the best time to be a FileMaker developer. So what is next? Let's get going. The next steps for us, we have a team working on quality of life things like doing, you have the searchlight in the Mac where you just type in something and they'll find something and open it. So we'll have a window. I think we're going to use Command K. You hit that, you can type in a layout name, a file name, a script name, any type of name, and then it'll pop up a list. You pick one, and it'll jump right there for that. So, giving you more options for when you're in layout mode or scripting, like when you add a go to next record script step. Maybe you want that checkbox saying, "Oh, exit in loop if not found" on by default. So, some of these things are tiny things, but when you add a whole bunch of them together, we call this the quality of life features. So we have a team working on that. We're going to be doing tighter integration with the entire Claris product line. There's a lot more work on Connect to do. Claris Studio, we're kind of waiting on them to supply us APIs. The minute we get them, we'll implement them. And everyone else has been talking about large language models, so I won't. The next steps for you, though, go to Claris, the Claris Connect and AI sessions tomorrow, so you can learn about LLM and what's going on there, and learn more about Connect. Connect is, we should probably have done this a little bit earlier, but I think this is going to be a very strong future for gluing things together, gluing Studio. I mean, I think they even announced it that, Studio and Connect are going to basically get merged. And it's going to have a lot tighter integration with FileMaker in the future, too. Come to the Claris booth to chat with Connor. I guess Wade is there right now, so you'll miss him today. But I may drop by there when I have a chance. Get current with FileMaker, and always do it. I mean, if you don't upgrade to FileMaker, then why am I here? I'm not just... and join the online Claris community for news and to participate in discussions, and that's what that QR code will take you to. Also, I guess we're inviting more people to join the ETS program, and if you want to do that, send an email to ets@claris.com. If you really want to get in and live on the bleeding edge and maybe destroy a bunch of FileMaker files that we told you that you shouldn't open in it unless you really have a backup. So that's, so, with the power of your organic brains and our technology that we're giving you guys, we can build we can do incredible things. So thank you. The first question is there chocolate? And yes, there is going to be chocolate at 4:30, so just go upstairs for it.
Real quick, so startup restoration is a nasty history, so now we have the persistent cache. What is your confidence in persistent cache? Can we really trust it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been out there for a year already in 2023. There's been a few minor bug fixes that were more like edge conditions that we've updated. So we're we're
messing with the structure, and we don't want our customers yelling at us. So.
Yeah, it's not nearly as invasive as the previous restore. It's not. Startup restoration was a little bit more invasive inside the Draco engine. This thing is basically just turning on an operating system feature, saying that we put this cache in this memory, write this memory to disk when you have a chance. And then if there's a failure, then that's when we look. So when there's a failure is when all the real work does. So if there is a failure, it will be a failure in bringing it back up, but it shouldn't affect operations.
Not on a power plug pull or.
Or not on a power plug. Yeah, you can't save a hard drive just stopping.
Actually, I want to add to that. There were two settings that you all saw, persistent cache and then sync to disk.
Yes.
The sync to disk setting is for pulling the plug. So I've pulled the plug. So
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You're
and
confident.
it didn't corrupt files. So yeah.
Okay. Let me mention something for the people in Ziegler Park, is that they're going to be shutting down that room in 5 minutes. So if you have a question, you may want to come over here. The partners are going to have an event in that room, so they're going to be kicking you out soon. So sorry about that, but
We'll continue Q&A here.
yeah, we'll continue Q&A here.
So a quick ask, having seen bottom right saying, hey, we're going to drop support for 20.04 Ubuntu. Lots of us moved into Ubuntu world to make it work, and it's brilliant, but we're not Ubuntu experts. So we've got to go from 20 to 22. Can you write some documentation to help people through the process of doing that? Because there are multiple use cases for that. We're on rented in VPSs. You can't just do an update because you lose all your files, but also the in-process update may throw up some errors. So could you give us some help with some additional documentation on that?
We'll note that, yeah. All right, guess let's go over here. So you have the mic.
Okay, you all knew or know that I was going to do it.
Okay.
In your future plans, let's take a look at passwordless, at bound and unbound keys, and let passwords die a decent death.
No, it's
And I'll see you at RSA.
right. Yeah. Well, Apple, I guess, has noticed us. So, which is sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. So their security department has been, they have active white hat hackers, trying to break into FileMaker. They're trying to find holes and stuff like that. And they did find a small hole there's going to be a new versions of 19.6 and 20.3, I think. Coming out of server to handle these things. It's kind of complex to how to get that to happen. But any hole is a hole, so there'll be new releases coming out to fix that. Sending the white hats to you? Okay.
Rick, we have a question here.
With Claris Studio mentioning MongoDB, the background, is there any plan to have FileMaker be able to use MongoDB as the SQL engine?
No. That's easy. One thing, FileMaker, is the pessimistic locking. There's so many rules that FileMaker does that really makes it, it makes it FileMaker and everything that you know, but it does not make it an easy thing to expand to handle, thousands of customers and stuff. So you really can't do pessimistic locking. You have to do optimistic locking. You have to have a different model in the back end. And there's no way, and you can't, and I was talking about context for how the, scripting system works. You really can't have server backends remembering the context of, 20,000 customers trying to hit your server and stuff like that. So the whole FileMaker model really is not scalable to those numbers. So we see just a much tighter integration of being able to move data back and forth between the two, being able to access data from there. Studio wants to be able to access data from FileMaker directly too. You'll have to talk to them what their plans for that is. So I really see it as two separate stacks. It also, another divider between it is that something inside FileMaker that was always fighting us is that, we have to be the database for new users that know nothing about databases and stuff like that, and be the database for you developers out there. So there was always a fight going back and forth, and you'd complain when we make things to make it easier. We don't want to go through all these wizards and panels and stuff like that. So I see the FileMaker direction, sticking with like the developer customers and Studio being the new user customers, the people, that's the first try, we get them hooked on that first and then say, we need to go further here we can look at FileMaker. If you don't know how to use FileMaker, there's a whole community of developers out here that we can send you to. So that's kind of the basic strategy of how we want to go in the future. So that's, yeah, just the Draco engine knows how to handle FileMaker style stuff. And then Mongo is the backend for the masses.
You talked about developer quality of life with some cool new features coming. What about a Copilot?
What, a compiler?
Yeah, like GitHub Copilot, code generation. Copilot.
Oh, Copilot. That's all in the AI discussion stuff. I've been trying to ignore all the AI stuff myself. So I haven't been. I see these people saying things and typing stuff in, and all of a sudden, like a calculation pops out and say, "Oh, that's amazing." I don't want to think about that. So sorry. Ask Ronnie or ask Wade about those type questions.
You mentioned
get this one over here. Yeah.
You mentioned in your presentation assisted install files right here. I was having a conversation this morning with another developer about that. Would it be possible in some future version to have the set file cache size included as an option in the assisted install file?
Please.
That shouldn't be too hard to do. Yeah.
Will the Let's Encrypt refresh process require disconnecting users or restarting the database server?
I believe it does at this point. Yeah, this first version will.
Sorry, I was writing down that feature idea. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, whether Let's Encrypt, when you refresh the certificate, when that script runs, it's going to have to disconnect everyone and bring up the server again, right?
Yeah. So we would love to find a way to maybe do a reload instead of a restart. At this point, it's just a restart.
The thing is that we have to talk to the OmniOrb libraries and stuff like that. We have some requests out to Duncan, the people that are updating, or Aspersaw, or the people that OmniOrb is an open source product that we have a yearly contract with to do updates and fixes and feature requests and stuff like that. Actually, when we started doing the HTTPS work, we were finding a lot of bugs that his other customers weren't, because we were hammering it a lot harder than a lot of his other customers. But he's very responsive to that. And now that we have this new feature, and now that we've stopped pestering him with HTTPS tunneling bugs, that we can probably work on, have a mechanism to have their OmniOrb library restart using a new certificate instead of having to force that stack to completely restart. I don't know. He may tell us that, oh, that's way too complex. I can't do that because there's too many threads running. I don't know. But we haven't had that full discussion with him yet. But that'll be the work we have to do to get that to work, to upgrade the certificate without having to restart the server.
Hey, Clay,
we'll do you next after this.
Thanks for sharing all the updates. Wondering if you can speak to roadmap for speed improvements for the Calc engine.
Yeah. The LLM work is so I think one of the things they've been talking about is doing this large vector math. And we were trying to do it with text first, and over here, Lucy. Yeah. And then we realized that, we need to really store a binary representation of that instead of the text representation, because to do the math on that, converting it back and forth, and that's kind of like the same problem with the JSON too, is that JSON is already stored as text, and as it goes through the processing and stuff like that, it's getting converted to a binary form and back and forth all the time. So what they're playing with is basically putting the vector into a container field as binary data. Ideally, we would just add new data types, but to add new data types requires us really changing the file format. So how many of you guys would be really peeved if we did a file format change in the next 3 or 4 years? But, and that's one of the things that holds back some of these optimizations. It would really be nice to give some new data types internally that they get pushed all the way through. But we're trying this out with the vector stuff using a container field. So it'll be interesting. You'll be doing math on container fields saying that, oh, you know, what's the cosine coefficient of these two container fields? And then it'll return you the value of how close the items in there are, whether they're related, whether they're exactly opposite, or they're actually equal. You'll hear, okay, I have been listening a little bit about the LLM, so. Math is interesting, but yeah, they are doing work in there that we're kind of testing, you know, to make that performant, because that's doing even a lot more calculations than all this other stuff. I mean, we're dealing with, you know, arrays with dimensions in like the order of, you know, 1,500 and stuff like that, and the linear math and that stuff occurring on that is outrageous. So, though, you know, it's interesting. Apple's writing these processors that have all these functions to do that work fast. So I wonder why they're doing that. But I don't know who has. Oh,
Here I am.
Harry.
Clay?
Oh, that's right. Sorry. I thought I was going to go back to you.
Clay, we have time for one more
In
question.
one of your slides, you showed the script selector as a drop-down.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's now got some kind of either a filter or a type ahead so that we don't have to scroll through 1,000 script names to find the one we want.
Yeah, actually,
Bob knows about
that UI that you saw there was me actually patching together. That was actually not the actual UI that it is currently. So it's that's still kind of in flux right now. It's changing. So maybe
There was
another way to be able to get
there
that
was
in
a
right away.
keynote that I sent through a Share Voice about a year and a half ago that had that and 2 or 3 other things that we're looking forward to.
And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to stop right now because I'm getting signals from other people that we have to go. So sorry about that, but thanks for coming.